Hello, and welcome to another Enrichment with the Gifted Guy. What we're going to be learning today is how to do the logic puzzles known as cryptograms. This begs the question, what is a cryptogram? A cryptogram is a coded message where either letters or numbers or symbols represent other letters. So you can see in this example cryptogram that these words as they're grouped do not make any sense. There is no word that is FZU. There's no word that is QR. But there are words that are in the English language that could represent those letters. And so what happens is when you find the letter or the number or the symbol and what it represents, it stands for that through the entire puzzle. So if you look at that lone F on the second line, more than likely that is one of two words. It's either an A or an I, because that's one of the only two one-letter words that are used commonly in the English language. So that means that if that F becomes an A, every F in the puzzle becomes an A. So that means all the Fs that you see throughout this puzzle would become an A. So here's what a cryptogram looks like with the cipher already solved. So you can see at the top here that there are letters, and under these letters there are corresponding numbers. And that these numbers then represent the letters above them in this puzzle below. So for example, this is a 4. So if you find the 4 on the cipher, which is right there, a 4 equals a T. So what that means is throughout the entire puzzle, 4s will be T's. So I'm going to go and put those in. That one right there. Right there. So on and so forth. So I believe I have all my T's. So then so the way a regular cryptogram would work is you don't have the cipher, so you might have to determine that. But because I'm just running you through the introduction to what it would look like if you solve the cipher, this is how it would be. So we have our 5 here, and if you look up a 5 right here, a 5 is an O. So that means that any 5 is going to be an O. So put an O there. There. No there. No there. And finally an O there. And we keep going through the entire puzzle and trying to, do all the ciphers. So the 11 here would be B. So that means that this is a B. And there's 11 here. No other 11s. The 7 here is an E, as you can see. So you would place an E in here. Any other 7s then become a E. So at this point, this puzzle starts to, as you start to figure out what the numbers mean, what letters they mean, you can start to fill in the blanks yourself. So for instance, we have to be O, it's a 2-letter word, so it's either going to be an or an of, logically. And it's not going to be to be of, it's going to be or. So if you look up here and check, the 23 is indeed the R. So that would go there. And the 16 would be to be or, and you could probably figure out what the quote is by now. So this would be, 16 would be an N. Let's see if there's any more N's. There is. All right, to be or not to be. And so this 19 is an H. So I'm going to put that in here. There's one down here as well. Follow those. you can fill in the blanks here. It's going to be, I mean, logically, it's just going to be an A because you have to have a vowel in there, and it's not going to be an I, a U, or a O. So if you check it, it is indeed an A. I don't think we have any others. So this is a two-letter word, so one has to be a vowel. So it's going to be this one or this one. But if you look up here, the 2 represents an I. So that one. There's that one. The 26 here. If you look on it's an S. So we got an S. 26 right here is an S. And so we have to be or not to be. That is and then obviously the answer is question. And we can double check. Q is 12 indeed. So that matches up. And we had already found before, or actually, no, I'm sorry, for the 3, it's a U. That has not been used before. So that is our cryptogram. It's to be or not to be. That is the question. And we had the cipher figured out for us. There are other ciphers, such as the one that you see here, which may give you a few of the letters, but it's certainly not going to give you all of the letters. And so you can see we have the A, F, G, I, M, O, and W all provided for us, and they're down here in the cryptogram. And so you can make certain assumptions. So if this is a two-letter word and starts with an I, it's probably going to be either if or is. And because the F is already claimed by 23, we know that 15 now is an S. And so all the 15s would be filled in with an S. Because this is an S and this is a double letter, we know that's got to be a vowel. So if you use S, and obviously E would be the logical, so it'd be EE. So now we have all the 18s. And so on and so forth. So like this word right here, which is almost filled in, it could be toward, it could be forward, but again, because the F is already claimed, it's toward, most likely toward. So now we know that the T is a 10. The 10 is a T, I mean, and that the 6 is a R, and that the 25 would be, would represent the D. And so you can start to fill in the blanks. And here's another one. This could be me, it could be my, but because we already have established that 18 is E, this is going to be a my, so that means that Y would be an 8. And so you can see how the level of difficulty is not as great as if it were completely blank. But because it does give you some of them to work with. And so you can start to fill in the blanks, kind of like Wheel of Fortune. Once you have a few letters in there, it's much easier to solve the puzzle. And so there are varying degrees of difficulty when it comes to cryptograms. And this would be an example of one that's maybe a little easier because it gives you some of the cipher already solved. So this is what many cryptograms look like, and it ups the level of difficulty in that none of the cipher is filled out. And so we have virtually nothing to go on other than the hints that the grouping of the letters and the sequence of numbers provides for us. And so we're going to solve this puzzle together momentarily. But before we do that, there are certain strategies and that you can use when you're trying to solve a cryptogram. And so I'm going to go over those strategies. So strategy number 1 is, if you have a single letter word, it's going to be either I or A. Those are the only 2 commonly used single letter words that there are. And in most cases, to be honest, it's going to be an A. The exception is if you have a quote, in which would normally be indicated with quotation marks or by having the name of the author at the end, that might be an I. But more than likely, if it's a single letter word, it is going to be A. And so you could put the A in there and give that a try. And if that works, leave it in. And if it doesn't, you can change it to the I, but it's going to be one of those 2 things. The second hint is, for any 2-letter word you have, one of those letters has to be a vowel. And the other one, especially if it's a 2-letter word, the other one has to be consonant. So for example, if we have an A that's listed, and there's the second letter that's next to it. Well, we know that that's that's most likely going to be as, because that is logically the two-letter word that would start with A. If we have an I, it's more than likely then that's going to be an if. So that next letter is going to be an F. If we have an O, it could be an or an of. On the reverse side of that, if we have the consonant starting, so if it has a T, we know that more than likely that vowel that's going to follow is going to be an O. So for two. And so for any two-letter word, we know there's going to be one vowel and there's going to be one consonant. So you can use that logic to try to determine if you have two-letter words. You could try to use that logic to try to determine exactly what letter goes where as a result. If you get a three-letter word that's used often, so it repeats itself throughout the cryptogram, not always, but in many cases, the most common three-letter word is the. And so you can try the into that cryptogram and see if that fits. And it may not. Sometimes it doesn't always. It's not always a the if it's repeated itself, but a lot of times it is. So that's a strategy that you can work. If there's an apostrophe in the cryptogram, this is either going to be followed by a T or by a D in most cases. It can also be an S if it's possessive. And so, but in most cases, like I said, the apostrophe is going to be followed by the T, such as contractions like don't and won't. And if it's a possessive, though, you have to be careful because the apostrophe could be indicating possessive, so it's going to be an S in that case. There are certain consonants that occur together, so like TH, WH, SH, and CH. So you can start to, so if you have an H there are four possibilities for what that might be when it comes when grouping consonants together. When you're using suffixes, there are common endings to suffix, so words such as shun, and ent, and ing, or ed. And so if you have a word and you have you have your root word in there and you need an ending to it, it could be any of these, but these are possibilities for what that might be. And then the last hint is that if you get stuck, just read the puzzle, and your mind, it's amazing what the mind can do if it's left to its own accord. And so if you just read it and let your mind do the work for you, it may fill in some of those blanks. As crazy as the English language might be at times, there is a basic structure of it. And again, you're using a lot of logic. Cryptograms do use logic. And so if a word doesn't make sense within the sentence, then it probably is not the word. So it has to make sense. It has to read as though it is, part of the English language. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work on a cryptogram together, and it's in the packet that I've listed here. All the hints and the example cryptograms and this one we're going to work on are all in this packet, which can be found at this address right here. And so if you want to print those up and use that, that's more than welcome. In a little bit, I'm going to show you where you can go online to do cryptograms, and we'll do one of those together as well. So you can choose to do that, or you can choose to skip over to the electronic part of it. And so we are going to solve a cryptogram together. So you can see this cryptogram has no cipher. So you have the letters right here, but no numbers underneath indicating what those letters stand for. And then you have the numbers around here. So the only clues that we're going to get are the clues that are within the puzzle itself. And so we have to look for things that make sense and things that logically would happen. So for example, using our first hint, which is to find one-letter words, we have a one-letter word here and a one-letter word here. This is not a quote. There are not quotes around it. There's not a author attributed at the end, as often is with quotes. So we can assume that this is probably an A. I'm going to show you that I'm using a pencil. And the reason why is when you do a cryptogram, you're going to make mistakes. And so you have to have a pencil so you can erase those mistakes. But I'm going to assume that these 17s are an A. So what that means is every 17 in the puzzle. now becomes an A. So I have to go through and find all the 17s. A there. A there. Make the A a little nicer. A there. A there. I think I got them. Let's double check. 17. I'll say this. I have a habit of always missing some. So I always try to double check because I tend to miss them. So that helped us fill in a little bit of blanks. And so what you can do now is you can look for other patterns or hints that give you, logically would give you answers. So for example, I'm going to go to these double numbers, 9, 9, 8, 8, and 25, 25. Now with these 6-letter words, you could have a double letter and it definitely be a consonant. That wouldn't be a problem. But with this 3-letter word, I can't think of any 3-letter words that have a double consonant in one vowel, back to back, the consonants back to back. But what I can think of, if you use vowels, then you can do that. And so it wouldn't be, you wouldn't have a double A or a double I or a double U, but you could do a double O for the word to, or you could do a double E for words such as T or C or B. Those could be examples there. Because I can think of more responses with the double E, I'm going to go with the double E here as being our, so that means that 8s are now E's. So I'm going to go through my puzzle, and you can use the puzzle itself to check your work. So when I replace these 8s with E's, does this make sense? So this is a word, and at the end of the word, it's more likely there's going to be an E than an O, so I can check my work. So here would be an E here. I would have an E here. An E would be here. So there are lots of these E's, which makes sense because E is a pretty common letter in the English language. So there's all of our E's. So we have all the A's and all the E's placed. And so this gives us a couple other possible clues. So I could try to complete this word. So like I gave you some examples of T, like a golf tee, but that's not common, I wouldn't think. Or a B, which, buzzing bee. I would say that in a typical, a C would be very much more common. So we have C there. So what that means is that any 24 is going to be an S. Sorry, not a C, an S. So we have our S there. And actually I'm writing upside down, so I think I messed that up. So let's take it the other way. No, I think I had it right the first time. I'm going to write this up. It's kind of difficult to write upside down it's at times, but okay. So I'll go ahead and fill in all the 24s. So we have a 24 here, a 24 here, and yep, a 24 here. So this is probably, makes sense because S is a pretty common word as well. So I've got all my S's in there. I don't think I missed any. If I do, I can always find them later. So we have C. We have this 2-letter word right here, or I have this one down here, which is about half done, or this one is done, only missing 1 letter. So I could go a lot of places. I'm going to go ahead and go with this one to start with, because it's a 2-letter word and I feel I have a better chance. So there's 2 possibilities. It could be B, like to be or not to be, or it could be we, as in we went to the store. Again, a more common one I would think would be the B. So I'm going to go with the B. So that means that B's are now 4. And what that means is I'm going to replace all the 4s in here. I don't think there are that many, with a B. So we have this one right here. We have, we have this one, this 2-letter one right here. So this could be as or is, or pretty much, or us, I guess. It can't be as, though, because we already established that 17 is A, and that's not a 17. It could be us, but again, not as common as is, which is an article that, that connects words, and so it's used quite a bit. So we just go through and do our 23s. Okay. So any 23 is now going to be an I. Let's see how many we can get. Not a ton, unless I missed some. 23, 23. Nope, I think we got them all. Okay, so we have is. So now we have these two right here and this one right here. I'm going to go to this one because it only has one letter left, so we're easier. So it could be was, it could be has. I can't think of any other words that it could be, but I could be a was-a or has-a. I'm going to go with an H. I'm going to put a small W as though it could be a W, and see if this H works. So I'm going to have the H is going to be 15. And so that means that any 15 now is going to be an H. So let's go H. I kind of skipped one of my strategies, which is that if you have a 3-letter word that is the same, so we have 15, 26, 21, 15, 26, 21, it a lot of times will be the article the. If it's only 2 of them, though, I don't feel terribly comfortable assuming that. If there are 3 or 4, yes, because that's used quite a bit, but 2, not necessarily. And as you can see, if we're right here, this is actually not correct. If for the, it's starting with an H. And so it could be has, except for we already have A and S established, and these are not it. So it could be hue as an H-U-E, like color, but that's probably not very common. So I'm going to go with a more common how. And now we've actually gotten 2 letters here. So we have a 26 right there. So any 26s, I'm going to go through and put an O. Okay, we got all of those. And then we have this W, which is 21. So let's see if we get any more 21s. I don't think we do, other than this one down here. Other than that, I think we've got all the 21s. Let's double check. Yeah, got all those. So now we have some words here. Is, how, see, how, has a. And so now we have to go to some of these. So this one right here is almost done. And actually, see, I missed one. So we already had 15 as being H. So that to fill in this blank, it's obviously this. So that means that now 25s are T's. So if I go through here, I got 25 here. 25. Oh, I did miss one right here. 24. 25. So here is 25T. Did I miss any 25s? I don't think I did, but there's always that possibility. So this is how a blank blank. 2 big words, so we're going to skip those. This is a pretty big one too, and actually I've missed a couple here. So this would be a that, and this would be an O. So I skipped a couple there, so I want to make sure that those are in. So I can come down to this one right here and look at this E. This E, and then this is probably a suffix. So it could be ED, but I can't think of words that would go there. That would be with a D. So I'm going to assume this is an R and place a very small D right here. And so we're going to assume that R's are 2. And so this is an R. This is an R, and that makes sense because that's a suffix as well. And so, oh, here's another one I missed. So now we have just one letter for each of these to figure out. So this is obviously each. So that means that C's are now 19. So if you've got a 19, it's going to be a C. C. We got them all there. For this one, this could be better, but we're going to read the sentence, see if it makes sense. See how each better has a, doesn't make sense so much as see how each letter has a. That makes a lot more sense. So that means that L's become a 10. So I got an L here, an L here. Let's see if there's any more L's. 10, 10, 10. I think I got them all. So we have this is how a blank blank. We have to fill in here B blank. Oh, I missed an O right here. Blank. And then this right here is obviously going to be can. So that means that can or 14. So are there any? Yes, there is one right here. No, I'm sorry. It's an N. My apologies. And I think that's all the 14s that we need. All right. So we could go to this E, and now that we have the ER solved, another suffix that is quite common is ED. So let's assume that that's a D, because the R seems to have worked in other places. So that means that now that D's are 16. So if we go to the 16s, we have a D. I think we got them all there. This is how a blank. Oh, I missed one. See, that's I keep missing some. Got an R there. Okay. All right. So now we only have to fill in one letter here to get these two. So this is obviously going to be should. So that means that 11 is now U's. So that means makes this a U. That makes this a U. It makes this a U. I think that's all of them. This 5 is going to be V for solved. So that means that those are there, and I don't think there are any other of those. We almost have this letter, this word now. Obviously, the logical, it's going to be U. So that means that Y are now 1. We have a Y here. I don't think there are any more Y's. So we've got pretty much done, except for these 3 last words. This is how a blank blank should be solved. You can see how each letter has a, this obviously, you have to replace 1, is an M. So M is 13. And do we have any other places? Yep, here's an M right here. I think we got all those. So we just have these 2 words. And now because we've made a lot of progress here, we can pretty much figure out what this would be. So this right here is obviously cryptogram. It's the only thing that really fits in there. So that means that 20 is P. So we'll put 20 here. So that makes this a P as well. And we have G is going to be a 7. And then, so this is how a cryptogram, and so the only 2 constants we have that would fit there, that we have left, F doesn't fit there, J and K doesn't fit there, Q doesn't fit there, X doesn't fit there, but Z does. So we have puzzle. So that's our last one, being a 9. So now we've solved it. We have this is how a cryptogram puzzle should be solved. You can see how each letter has a number. We have not placed the F, J, K, Q, or X, and commonly J, Q, and X are not placed very often. And even when you're playing Scrabble, those are kind of rare words that are worth a lot of points because those are not used in words very often. So we solved that cryptogram. So that's the cryptogram that you can solve, and there are other cryptograms in the packet, the link to the packet that I provided for you earlier in this video. I do want to show you a couple more resources if you really like cryptograms. So there are online cryptograms. If you go to puzzlebaron.com, they have tons of different puzzles on puzzlebaron.com, and they do have a cryptogram page as well, and so you can find cryptograms here. And so they do it a little bit differently, is that there are letters instead of numbers. And then they have a couple of things that are nice. They have a hint me or a check me, so they'll check whether you're correct or not. And you can reset it if you mess up. And it tells you what letters are remaining. It also tells you how many there are. So there are 11 of these I's. So if you can figure out what the I is, that's going to give you a lot of information. So given that there's 11 I's and the most common letter in the English language is an E, I'm just going to assume that that's an E. And then we'll go from there and we'll see where that gets us. So let's see if we can't find a couple other things that might help us out here. Here's GWI and GWI repeated. And this ends with an E. So I'm going to assume that this is the. And then this would be that. That gives us some more. And then we have these 2-letter words right here. So it's either going to be an O or a U or an I. So it could be any of those. So I'm going to hold off on those and try to find another one that might. So this is not an A. It's not a U wouldn't make much sense. I wouldn't make much sense. I'm going to go with how on this one and see how that works out. I don't think that's it. Because ow is not a word. So here's the nice thing about this is you can simply erase it like that. I guess it could be his, and that's is. That makes more sense. And so this right here is probably, it starts with an A, and it's not a double letter, so it's probably and, would be my guess. And so what you start to see is how this starts to kind of fill in. I don't think that that is actually right, because those look kind of funky. I can do that. This is probably a D. Let's do that D. Well, this would be and. All right, maybe that is it. So we have the blank blank, that and his is the, maybe this is the D. And this is not the D, so let's get rid of that because this should be finished. That does seem to make a little more sense. So this is probably not an N. Although no, it could be an N. So this is, with an N, it's kind of weird. So I would say this is only. The only D, oh, nope, can't be D. And so what we can do is we can check it and see which ones are correct. And oh, we have to complete the puzzle. So this is definitely going to be before. The only real, I think I got some incorrect letters over here. But there's some correct ones over here. Nope, that's definitely not it. Way, bring, gaze. See, and I think I have some incorrect letters here. So let's go back. I think that is correct. So the only real blank that any, let's see, that's an M. Oh, that gives us that. Poem. The only real blank that any, You would think that that's writer. The only real blank that any may bring before his gaze is the finished poem. So now we have these couple words up here, and these are longer words, and we can check things. So does the D yeah, the D is there. That is correct. That is correct. The P, let's see if the P is correct. It may not be. Nope, I think it is. Oh, the only real evidence that is correct that any critic may bring before his gaze is the finished poem. And so we can check it and see if it's correct. And what we found is that it is correct. And what this does is it gives me the average time, the recorded time. My time was below average. And so you can kind of challenge yourself to do these. And then, and like I said, it's an easy way to not have to erase and to not make mistakes on that. So the other resource that I would like to show you is this Puzzle Maker by Discovery Education. So if you go to puzzlemaker.discoveryeducation.com/cryptogram, it gives you these 4 steps that you have to do that will allow you to create your own cryptogram. And so you enter a title. So I'm a big baseball fan, so I'm going to put my title in as baseball. And then you enter a phrase. So you can pick a quote by somebody. You can pick a common saying or something like that. And so I'm going to pick one of the most famous baseball players in the world, who's Babe Ruth. And Babe Ruth said the following, which is, baseball was, is, and always will be to me the best game in the world. And then you can choose what you want the letters to be replaced with. You want to replace with numbers, English letters, Greek letters. And so I'll show you what we've seen numbers and English letters, because I want to show you what Greek letters kind of look like. And then you can choose letters that you want to give away to make your cipher a little bit easier to solve. So I'll do an A because an A appears in there a few times, and I'll do L, and maybe that will help people. And then once you have all that in, you hit create my puzzle, and you can see it does the work for you. Here are all these Greek symbols. This is kind of confusing. So if you want to make it more challenging, you can make it more challenging. And so people could take your cryptogram and try to solve it on their own.